Riverside.
Welcome to Dance Talk with Joanne Carey, where the dance world connects, the conversations inspire, and where we are keeping them real. I'm your host, Joanne Carey, and today I am joined with Dante Puleio. I am delighted to have Dante back. He is a regular here on Dance Talk. I love to say that I have regulars on Dance Talk. Welcoming him back to talk about the upcoming season with the Limon Dance Company. Dante, for those of you who don't know, but I'm sure many of you do, that he is the artistic director of the Limon Dance Company. He was a former dancer with Limon for many, many years. He has quite an impressive background and currently spearheading this delightful company. So welcome back, Dante, to Dance Talk.
What an intro. I hope I live up to it.
You do.
Yeah. Thank you. It's great to be back. It's good to see you. I love getting to talk about this, and I love getting to talk about it.
Yes, it's exciting, and before we got on, I was even thinking about how, like, I knowing that it's Limon we're going to talk about, I feel like, I'm ready. It's got that energy, that Limon energy, which is, interesting, because I think, different companies come with their what they're known for.
Right.
But we'll get into that a little bit. But for those of you who are new to the podcast, I'm going to ask Dante to give us a little bit of background about himself so that you can get to know him. If you don't mind, Dante.
Yeah, I love that energy you're talking about. Yeah, it's not going to be a light summer read, I'll tell you that much.
No.
Background, yeah. So, like yourself, I'm a Jersey girl, but based here in New York. I started dance pretty late. I was about 18 or 19 when I really dove into it. Started at the Laban Center in London, went to the Northern School of Contemporary Dance. Then I moved back to America. I went to the University of the Arts, graduated from there. May it rest in peace. And then I had a really fun career. I got to dance with a bunch of different dance companies, Limon being one of the major ones. Then I left to do some musical theater and film. And then I came back. I finished my career with Limon. Then about in 2014, I retired. I went and got my master's at UC Irvine. From there, I did some teaching in universities. And then in March 2020, I got the call from the dance company, from Limon, to be the artistic director. And I thought, it's the beginning of a pandemic. Now's the perfect time to take on a performing arts organization. Let's see what happens. And now I'm entering my 5th year, and literally couldn't be more excited that this came my way and I have the opportunity to steward this incredible legacy and history and steward it to the next generation.
Yes, really. It really is. And, I just want to back up a little bit. When you talked about briefly that when you retired from dance, can you just talk a little bit about that, what that was like for you? When did you feel, or if you ever felt, that you were missing dance or being in the dance world? Just talk about that a little bit, because I know there's listeners who perhaps are on that cusp or deciding that, or went through the same thing as you did.
Yeah, there were a couple of factors that contributed to that moment. We were going into a really major season. I was featured. I was doing all these really great solos. I was in a Starbucks or something, and I remember seeing the New York Times art section sitting on one of the tables, and there was my picture. And it was the most amazing, moment. You're like, oh, like, this is it. Like, I never even dreamed of this being a possibility. And at the same time, I'm getting a phone call from Verizon saying that if you don't pay your phone bill today, I'm going to cut off service. I was like, how, like, the incongruency of that moment of literally having made it, whatever made it means, and then not being able to pay your phone bill felt so like, how is this the reality? And then we were going into like a 6-month layoff period, which meant going back to waiting tables and walking dogs and babysitting and whatever I could do to pay the bills. And I was turning 40, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I have to do something else.
Yeah.
So I thought I was going to leave the dance world entirely. I did like the strong interest, Meyer-Briggs, whatever those tests are. I had a career counselor, all through Actors for Equity,
Yeah.
Actors Equity. They give you all of
Mhm.
these cool things to engage with to help you along your way.
Mhm.
Well, in that process, I learned I should either be a security guard or a landscape architect.
Wow. And that's
And
like 2 opposite ends of the spectrum,
I
right?
was I was like, how what answer did I give to a question that led to
Yeah.
these two? And,
Yeah.
and I love being outdoors. I love working
Mhm.
with my hands in the dirt and, planting. And I was like, okay,
Mhm.
maybe landscape architecture is my next, avenue. Well, I started looking at schools and the kinds of courses you had to take to do that were all of these really intense science courses. And I was like, no, girl, she is not going to be for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like I'm looking at all this and I was like, well, actually, I really want to learn more about costuming and lighting
Mhm.
and the craft of choreography in a way that I didn't learn because I came to dance so late.
Yeah.
She was like, and I was talking with my career counselor and she's like, well, what did you want to do before you were thinking about, when you were little, what did you want to be? And it's
Mhm.
like, well, I wanted to be a therapist. And she's like, well,
Mhm.
what is it about that? I was like, well,
Yeah.
helping people get from one place to another, like getting people over something, getting to where they want to be. And she's like, well,
Yeah.
doesn't dance do that? Doesn't dance education do that? And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, yes,
Bing, light
yes.
bulb, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, cool. I'll go back to school. I'll get my, my higher education. I'll get my degree,
Mhm.
my master's in dance education, whatever that looks like. And so that was sort of the route to
Mhm.
getting to that career transition. And
Yeah.
then when I'm at school, they ask you what you're going to write your thesis on. And I had no idea. I told them the story about being on the cover of the Times and not being able to pay my
Yeah.
phone bill. And I was like, there's something missing. Like, what is it about dance that once, like the dance boom, the modern dance revolution, what was it about those moments
Mhm.
that created this form? And why don't people care about it anymore? And my thesis chair was like, that is what you were going to write about.
Yeah.
So, contextualizing mid century modern dance for the contemporary audience was my work. And that ended up leading to this career of being the artistic director of Limon.
Wow. And I just have to point out, like your career counselor, security guard and landscape architect, security guard, you're like the keeper of the you're like the guard of this legacy.
What?
And yes, and landscape architect, I mean, choreography and staging these pieces, it's just another bridge to that same skill. So pew, pew, more light bulb moments, and I will not charge you for that.
I will give you
But
copyright credit though. I will give you some credit.
yeah, but how about that? I mean, really, those
Yeah.
skills and those attributes are there, right?
I hadn't
Wow.
thought about it like that. That's pretty brilliant. Yeah, that's pretty
That's
brilliant.
amazing, right? I mean, I
Thank
think
you.
you're welcome, and I think it just leads us right into this landscape of
Hmm.
art and choreography and this legacy that you have been at the helm of for 5 years now. I can't believe it's been 5 years.
That's
Wow.
wild. Wild.
Crazy, crazy, and I bring out anytime you come on, I bring this out all the time. For those of you who are
Ah.
listening on audio, I'm just holding up this little, booklet that was at the gala that was right after like, when we were back open from COVID,
Mhm.
and I always love it. I look at it from time to time because that was a nice evening. That was a great evening.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. So let's talk about this upcoming season. Maybe talk a little bit about last season,
Mhm.
and what perhaps, made you put on the bill this season. Those things you've chosen to highlight for this 80th anniversary, I think it is, right? Isn't it
Yeah,
80
that's right.
years?
We are
Wow.
looking at 80 years. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so as we've talked about in the past, a lot of my curating, it comes from pulling at different threads of who Jose Limon was,
Mhm,
really digging into his cultural heritage that I think, or no, I don't think that shaped his repertoire. And
mhm.
then I started looking at the women who helped or who were part
Mm,
of his dance making and who influenced him. And so the last couple seasons we're pulling at those threads, looking
mhm,
at his works like Choreographic Offering and Orfeo and Dances for
mhm,
Isadora, dances he made for the women in his life. And then
mhm,
pairing those works with or La Malinche, which he made for his mother. and then pairing those works with contemporary female choreographers.
Mhm.
Um, Hilla Benari, Kayla Farish, Azure Barton, building female rep to live in conversation with these works that he made for the women in his life to really bridge and underscore the importance of women in this form that I think often gets left behind that notion because there are so many men in
Yeah.
high level positions in this field when there are so many women that are part of the field. So I really wanted to draw attention to that. It was also during Roe versus Wade being overturned. So I just felt like there were a
Oh,
lot of conversation
I see.
points
Mhm,
that we needed to address and talk about in the
mhm.
field.
Yeah.
So now I'm interested in another part of Jose that is not really talked about. We don't really know a lot about, and that's
Mhm.
the relationships with the men in his life.
I see.
Um,
Okay.
so I'm looking at some of his works over the past couple of seasons. I've been pulling out the Morris Pavan, the Traitor, and now the Emperor Jones, which feature these two male characters that are both the antagonist and the protagonist, and they're really at each other in these different works. And no other choreographer from that time featured such male prominent characters as the two lead
Mhm.
roles that were at each other.
Okay.
So I really want to pull at that thread and get to know Jose and get my audience to know Jose a little bit more
Mhm,
from that angle and
mhm,
diving into the male power dynamic, how he saw the men in his life, how he worked through that choreography in those pieces, and it seemed like the right moment to really talk about that.
mhm,
Um, we were coming off the election last year and we were planning for this season. And there is this piece called The Emperor Jones, which we're looking at. And come here, puppy. Um, The Emperor Jones is about a convicted felon who becomes a tyrannical leader.
mhm,
And I was thinking one's imagination doesn't have to go far to draw a contemporary parallel.
mhm,
So I was like,
mhm,
okay, so this is the moment we're living in. Let's have a deeper conversation about that work
mhm,
and
mhm.
how that can speak to the current moment. So I started
Yeah.
building my season around that kernel.
Around that, okay.
Um,
And then when you dive into restaging and reworking a piece, do
mhm.
you I guess and maybe it just depends on what you're working on. Do you, restage it exactly as it was, or then do you ever add? Because I know with I think it was with Kayla last year, Kayla Farish, didn't wasn't there a piece of music discovered or a piece of choreography discovered and then she built upon it or something like that?
Right. Yeah.
So I guess it really depends. So when talk about when you're restaging these,
Yeah.
what's the process like?
It's a little bit different with each piece.
Mhm,
Last season, we did a piece called La Malinche, and we really brought it back to the essence of what that original reconstruction was.
mhm,
Historical. We used the original recording that he used. We
mm,
really dove into it as a museum piece and how that museum piece speaks to the moment. Um,
okay.
and for this season, I'm looking at the Emperor Jones and I am reimagining the entire piece and restaging it and resetting it for 2025.
Okay.
The original play takes place on a Caribbean island,
Mhm,
um, with the people of that island being part of the core, the subjects.
mhm,
Um, and the whole play and the whole ballet takes place in that scene, in that setting. Well, I'm
mhm.
taking it out of that setting, placing it in 2025 in a city, in an urban landscape where you have
Mhm, mhm.
buildings and it's
Wow.
refreshed entirely. So this
Mhm.
throne that we use that has all of these, maybe like natural forest elements, and now I'm putting an office chair. These
Ah,
screens that we
okay.
use that are like trees or totem poles are now part of the cityscape, are these buildings. So for this particular restaging, I'm reimagining the look of it, reimagining the
Mhm.
costuming, reimagining the lighting
Mm.
squarely in the contemporary context. The
Wow.
choreography itself changes very little. I think the
Mhm,
tension between the two creates some dynamic storytelling.
mhm. Yeah, and then when you and let me ask you this, so because what's going through my mind as you're talking about all that, when it becomes a urban landscape, and I'm picturing this black and white You know,
Cold, shadowy.
yes, but is it are the colors that way? Is the lighting that way, or haven't you gotten that far yet?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going deep into it. So the costumes are these suits, black and white ties, except
That's
for
what
the Emperor
I see,
Jones. There's a
yeah,
specific, yeah.
okay.
Um, the lighting, you think of this play originally or the ballet originally taking place in the jungle, so you've got heat and
Yeah,
humidity.
yeah,
The sun
amber,
peeking,
like amber color,
yeah,
yeah.
like the sun peeking through the canopy of the trees.
Mhm.
Whereas this, it's cold, it's shadowy, it's dark, it's
Ah,
city. It gives it such a different flavor and smell and taste
yeah,
that, yeah, the lighting is impacted by it. Just the overall feel, what you're going to walk away with, I think will set
wow.
you up to look at the work and look at the intention of the work in a new way.
Mhm,
Um, so instead of looking at this piece and thinking, oh, it was created in this time for that
mhm, mhm,
time, there are still really some universal aspects to it. And I think even
mhm.
seeing it in the historical context says so much.
Yeah,
But I'm really interested in putting it in the contemporary context to see where we land. It's a big swing. I'm taking a big
yes,
chance by doing this. But
mhm,
I'm really interested to see how else this work can shine in new ways
yeah,
and, have that conversation. I think it creates some dialogue for both
yeah,
Eugene O'Neill's play, for Limon's
yeah,
work itself, and where we are in this moment and how this work can
yes.
speak.
Yeah, which is so interesting and very it is a risk. But it's to me it's an exciting risk. And then when you say Eugene O'Neill, I picture newspaper for some reason. Like, reading I don't know why, reading the newspaper. But that very, like you're on the train and I don't know, that's what comes in my head. But I think it's, as an artistic director and an artist and to have that freedom within the company and the confines of that is fascinating to be able to do that, and it's exciting. And how are the dancers responding to the work? Did were
hmm
they did they have to see or experience, or I don't know what the archives are like for the former
Yeah.
piece, but did they have to go through that and then learn this, or just learn it fresh from what it is?
There are a variety of ways which we can stage a work.
Yeah.
For this one in particular, I started working with a dramaturg long before
Oh,
long before I walked into the studio.
cool.
I
Yeah.
wanted to talk out these ideas and make sure that my idea as to how to bring this to life really
Hmm.
had legs and I could
Yeah.
really talk about it. So I'm working with this dramaturg. Their name is Dominique Ryder. And
Hmm.
I told them everything that I was interested in doing. And then they just started asking questions. They started poking holes
Yeah.
wherever there might be a hole
Yep.
and forced my understanding of the work and my
Mhm.
understanding of how it lives in the perspective, in the contemporary
Mhm.
perspective, forced me to fill those holes or encouraged me to think about how I could fill those gaps.
Yeah.
Uh, so then I made a conscious choice to give the dancers all of my information. Like this is
Mhm.
where I'm going to go with this.
Yeah.
However, we are going to learn this piece in the historical context. So you know where it comes from, why it was made, and
Yeah.
how I learned it. So
Yeah.
this way, when you go to learn it or teach it years from now, you can go from an authentic,
Yeah.
original intention and then
Yeah.
build from there versus just building from the version that I want to see.
Yeah.
So with that means they learned each section as I learned it with the names of
Yeah.
the sections as I
Okay.
learned it with the choreography. We
Yes.
looked at the videos from the
Mhm. Mhm.
1950s and the 80s and
Oh, I love
2011 when
that.
I
Mhm.
performed it. And then after it was set,
Mhm.
Dominique came in and we had a real conversation. How do you feel
Uh-huh.
living inside of these different sections? What
Yeah.
feels culturally appropriative? What feels
Mhm.
inappropriate? What feels wrong? What feels good? Um,
Mhm.
what does each section mean? How does
Mhm.
each of those sections live in the current moment?
Yes. Yeah.
Great. And then we took all that information, we went back into working the piece, and then I had them write a lot about each section.
Yeah.
How does this piece feel? How does this section of
Mhm.
the piece feel for you? What vocabulary in
Mm.
it um, encourages that or supports that idea or that intention? What vocabulary in this section doesn't support
Yeah.
that or encourage that? Okay, now how can we adjust that choreography that doesn't feel right or
Mhm.
doesn't speak to the intention that we're looking at it through? And then
Mhm.
they got to massage those moments, figure out how Limon's vocabulary in the piece itself,
Mhm.
it can be reimagined by still using the vocabulary, but
Yeah.
adapting it so it fills the story out in this contemporary context. So they had a big hand in both the conversation
Mhm.
and then both in how they physicalize the choreography.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it sounds I love that stuff and it just sounds so fascinating. And I love the rehearsal process. I mean, you know that from my modern
Hmm.
background and stuff. But I have to point out again, and when I hear you talking about it, it is like that landscape architecture. You are taking it from what it was, picking it up, uprooting it, and replanting
Hmm.
it in this modern way. I don't mean to sound hokey, but that's
No, it's so
profound. It's
good. It's really
profound.
right. Yeah.
It's really and then it's gonna be watered and see how it's going to do in that new environment, which
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be wonderful.
I
It's that's it.
love that metaphor. I love the
Yeah.
metaphor. Yeah.
It's really kinda it's I do too because I see it, like, in my
Yeah.
head. Um, yeah. So what else is on the program?
All right. So it
Is
is
that
the
happening
80th.
yeah, okay.
Yes, that's the second piece in the program. It is the 80th, so I really want to honor Jose, but I also want to honor the 80 years of artists that were
Yeah.
part of making this moment real.
Yeah.
So I cast out a wide net to the
Mhm.
generations of artists from the people who danced with Jose
Oh,
all the way to students at LaGuardia Performing Arts High School who
wow.
are experiencing Limon for the very first time.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
we have this really beautiful collection of about 25 different artists from
Mhm.
across the 80 years who will be um, part of this group version of
Oh.
Jose's solo Chacon.
Oh,
So
wow.
he has
Okay.
this 10-minute solo,
Mhm.
and Logan Francis Kruger, who is the associate artistic director and rehearsal director, she is restaging the solo as a group dance. So we
Oh.
have this maybe sort of like passing of the baton from generation to
Mhm.
generation. And there are
Wow.
moments where they're coming together, and it's really just to celebrate, or have this conversation across time.
Yeah.
What is it for these dancers who were danced with
Yeah.
Jose to be
Yes.
sharing a stage with these dancers who are experiencing it for the first time?
Wow. And
So
what
that
I
opens
mean
the program.
wow, wow, and as a dancer, I'm thinking, what a gift to dance with somebody who was there at who was like one person away from him, or to
Right?
have that and to be handing it down. We talk so often, back in the day, you didn't have right YouTube and video and all that sort of stuff. You had these notes that you have
Yeah.
you have in this book,
Exactly right.
you
Those.
know
Yep.
so to be able to really hand off that legacy in that manner, that's oh wow, that's really exciting. And what a gift for those students. I remember seeing you had students perform the night of that gala. I forget where,
Yes.
and I mean, they really did a good job. They really had that freedom to move their bodies and express. And you know how kids can be, at first
Yeah.
they can be shy, or
Of
but I'll tell
course.
you, I think the Limon style lends itself to the ability to I think it's because it's conversational on a very profound level, on a very
Mm-hmm.
it can be, it's not just like movement, but it's these nuances that I found very
Mm-hmm.
conversational, in my
Yeah.
opinion, in my humble
Yeah.
opinion. You know?
Well, when you have the technique that's based on ideas about movement, breath,
Mhm.
weight, it becomes
Yeah.
very personal, and it gives you a lot of access or
Mhm.
agency to the material itself because you're able to find who it is that you are when you want to express something.
Yeah.
And yes, finding the form and finding the shape is an important part of it. But if you're given the agency of finding your breath and weight in the transition to get into those
Mhm.
shapes, then you
Mhm.
have this connection to the material itself where it feels like it can be part of your own personal history. It's not just this
Yeah.
thing that's been put on you, but something you're contributing to.
And so what's next on the program?
Well, as I talked about, we're pulling from these threads of different aspects of Jose and looking at the male power dynamics and some of the queer subtext that I see in Limon's work. There's this really interesting artist in Mexico City. His name is Diego Vega Solorza. And his work really lives in this world of just unpacking the impact of what expectation of being masculine, especially inside of the culture where he grew up.
Hmm.
And he's, really unpacking queerness in dance and in life in general. So I was like, well, this is the world you're living in, and this is the world that I want to talk about with Jose. So I want to create this conversation between Jose and Salorza. They grew up in really similar upbringings. Diego was born in the same area of Mexico as
Oh.
Limon, but the way they navigate and way move through the world is like strikingly different, but they're such similar upbringings. So I
Hmm.
think that tension and dynamic is interesting.
How did you find him? How did you find?
The gram.
Oh, there you go.
um,
Sorry, go ahead.
I also have, I also speak with the dancers, and we
Hmm.
all talk about choreographers they want to work with. And
Oh,
his
okay.
name had come up in a
Hmm.
couple of the conversations. So I started looking at his work through an
Oh,
introduction from the company.
okay.
And it's so striking and hypnotic and repetitive, but then it evolves in these really beautiful organic ways. So just visually striking, and rhythmic and pulsing. So I was like, yeah, this
Hmm.
feels like the direction I want to explore. And especially since his world is inside of this
Yeah.
power dynamic queerness, it seemed like the right moment to have
Hmm.
this conversation between Jose's work, especially The Emperor Jones,
Hmm.
and Diego's new work. So we have a new piece by him called Gemelgos, and he created just this really, really strong work that I'm excited for the world to see and be
Hmm.
introduced, especially in New York, who may not know him yet.
Hmm.
And I do not think that they will forget him or his work
Wow.
after this.
Wow.
So
I
yeah,
mean,
new
yeah, go
premiere.
ahead. Sorry. Hmm.
But yeah, no, the new premiere by him closes out the program.
And he must have been like, for him to get that, interest, like, oh, the Limon Company. Have you talked to him about that at all? Like, what his reaction to all that? Like, was he influenced by Limon? What was what's a little bit of his background? I know what you said his work is like, but what's his background like?
Yeah, he also came to dance pretty late, like myself, like Jose. And, Jose Limon for him is this icon, this
I
person who
bet.
did
Gosh.
the thing.
Yeah.
So for him to have gotten a call from me was very exciting for him. Really thrilling, I know, and I'm sure very nerve wracking.
Hmm. Yes. Yes, I bet.
um,
My gosh.
but, he says it was a dream to be able to get the phone call.
Yeah.
So to have the opportunity for my company to work with him, um, you know, my artists respect him and who he is,
Hmm.
and he respects us and who we are. So it was a really beautiful coming together. We had a
Yeah.
session together in June where he got to meet the company, work with them a little bit. And,
Hmm.
I'm always nervous in that moment. Like,
Yeah.
are they going to get along?
Yes, yes, of course,
And,
right? Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt the artistic process, and I don't want to um, insert myself
Hmm.
in that space. I want them to build a relationship.
Sure.
And so, but I also want to make sure that the dancers feel safe. I want to make sure that he feels supported. So it's
Yeah.
a very delicate dance in the beginning.
Yes.
And so I was outside the studio working, just keeping my ear and just listening, being a part of that early moment. And then it was maybe like 10 minutes in, and they started working on something that was challenging, and they all started laughing together.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
And I was
yeah.
like, okay,
Oh,
we're going to
shoot.
be good.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, I'm sure it'll get hard. I'm sure there'll come moments, but
Yep.
I know that if this is the foundation they're building of coming up against something and then laughing together through it to get to the
Yes.
other side, then this is the right energy. And it really
Yeah.
has been a beautiful collaboration between
That's great.
him and
And
the dancers.
how I know you said in June, did you say the dancers met with him? So has he been coming regularly? How has it been via, how has that process worked with him being in Mexico, correct? He's still in
Mm-hmm.
Mexico? Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So he came and he got to see the company perform at Bryant Park this summer.
Oh, nice.
And then the
Hmm.
following day, we had a nice workshop where they got
Yeah.
to hang out and take
Oh,
class.
cool. Hmm.
And then after having worked with the dancers, he went home, thought about the
Yeah.
artists in the room and what he was going to make.
Hmm.
And then he came back with a pretty solid plan that he spent 3 weeks with us.
Oh,
He
nice. Okay.
just went home, finished the work, and then he'll come back
Right, right.
next week for us to get
Yeah.
the work teched and they're ready for
Flushed
a
out, yeah.
stage.
Yeah, and I kinda sometimes I like that, like, when the artist comes in for that, like, concentrated amount of time where you really have to put your nose to the grindstone
Hmm.
and work it out and then go back and flush it out and rehearse it and get it in your body, and it's to have both things, you have a little longer time to work through the process, but then you have this, like, oh, I gotta learn it in this amount of time and have it be ready and do good, all those things.
Yeah,
But it's
exactly.
exciting, right? And you want to, as a dancer, you want to do well. You want to get that in your body and
Yeah.
experience that. Well, that's and is it the piece? Did he make the piece on the whole company or just
Six dancers.
six dancers? Nice, yeah, yeah. And so, can you give us a little more or no because it's under wraps?
Let's see.
What can you tell
Um,
us? I should say.
I can. It is. It is like the word striking just keeps coming to mind.
Okay. Is it
It's really
colorful? I feel
striking.
like it's colorful.
No, it's
Oh, it's not.
actually it's
Okay.
actually pretty dark.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, I think it'll be very contrasty.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
contrasty. There is this really intense build that gets to this moment, and then the choreography becomes really quick and clipped and tight,
Uh-huh.
and
Okay.
so different from what we normally do that I think physically
Ah.
it was a really specific challenge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're like one, boom,
Yeah.
ba,
Yeah.
D, so it's like move,
Wow.
D, da, these different
Wow.
poses, G, da,
Okay.
and it's tight and they're near and it's
Yeah.
sculptural,
Oh, okay.
and yeah, it like continues to like push and ebb,
Mm-hmm.
and it like builds and builds and builds and builds. It's really, and then there's like a moment, and then it just like the energy shifts and changes, and then it slowly builds into this really climactic moment, and
Oh,
really
nice.
thrilling work. I'm
Very nice.
very
And
excited for the
what's the
stage.
title of it? Did you say? What?
It's spelled Jamlegos.
And what?
Jamalagos.
And what does that? Is that a name or does that mean something?
Yes, it's a weekend horse.
Oh, that's a
Yeah,
powerful name. In English, that's a
yeah, I know,
powerful name.
right?
Weekend
Yeah,
horse.
yeah.
And
The expectation of strength,
yes,
and then what that expectation can do to an animal that's strong,
yes.
really lives inside of this idea of the expectations of masculinity and how
Wow.
what the effects can what those expectations can do to.
Yes. And so powerful. I mean, I think the image of a horse too, I think of, you have those wild horses, you can't tame a wild horse,
Right,
nor should they be tamed, right?
right.
But then, and our own history, I don't know if you know this, but our own history with horses arrival in America, on America's soil from Mexico, and to have it be called, that's another layer that I love that he's, using that analogy. I think that's a very powerful analogy. And I think it also is in line with Limon himself, bringing that culture aspect. I don't know if I'm reading into it, but that's just my initial, take on it, that it's that
Yeah.
cultural. That's exciting. And then I'm
I mean,
assuming,
horses aren't indigenous to this continent, so
right? I
the fact that
know.
they came, they were brought here,
Yes.
no different than the sense of what else comes here that isn't from here, and that infiltration, and
Wow.
I think it's very layered. I think you're right.
Yes, and and listeners too. I like, I always get excited when I talk about dance. That's why I do this, you know. But sometimes people can think that, oh, dance, it's, oh, fluffier, and there's a lot of fluff. I love the
Yeah,
fluff. I'm a big
lots of
fluff
fluff.
girl. I love it.
100%. There is
You,
a valid place in this
yes,
field for the fluff.
love the fluff. But when you have all these layers and you're telling, history and story and culture and society, and it can be bridged from one century to the next century, and it doesn't, the people might change, the times might change, but the issues keep marching along with us. That dance is such a beautiful vehicle for that. And I say that truly because I love dance.
Yeah,
No, but all kidding aside, I mean, it really has that ability, and the fact that movement, time is movement, and what a better way to talk about time than through dance. Wow. Wow. It sounds like a very exciting program. And then are you having the gala? That didn't happen yet, right?
No, no, no.
No.
Gala will
Okay.
be in the 80th anniversary gala will be in the spring.
Oh, in the spring.
I
Okay.
think,
Okay.
yeah, I think
Okay.
Thursday, April 30th.
Oh, right. The
So,
spring.
so
Right. Because it was
save
the
the date.
spring.
Save the date.
What was it? Say it again. April.
Thursday, April 30th.
April 30th.
Yeah, so it'll
Wow.
be a very, very big celebration. 80
It'll,
years is going to be a
wow.
momentous moment.
Yes. I mean, what an exciting, and so tell me now, as the artistic director, 5 years in, what do you think has been your added value to this company? What have you added,
Mm.
and your purpose and your goals that you have you thought about that at all, or?
That's a solid question. I, I think I have been able to steward this legacy forward. I
Yeah.
am creating a space for it for the future so I can hand it to the next generation. For
Yeah.
as long as I can continue to make sure there is a space at the table for Jose and for
Hmm.
the early career, mid career, and acclaimed artists to continue to create through our dancers and
Hmm.
on Jose's platform, and I
Yeah.
can continue that interest and that investigation and that love for the technique, love for the work that this supports for future works,
Yeah.
then that is my job.
Yeah, yeah. And how about the funding issues? Has that affected the company? All the funding issues and all that?
It is. It continues to be a point of conversation, and it
Okay,
continues to find ways to excite and inspire, to
good.
bring
Yep.
in new money that maybe there wasn't before.
Yeah,
Um, the systems we have in place are broken. It's very
yeah,
obvious that
yeah,
the way we rely on funds is not
yeah,
sustainable.
yeah, yeah.
So we are always deeply rooted in figuring out
How to,
how we can do better.
yeah, yeah.
So we
So
are not always relying on this one person or this one grant
right, right.
grantor.
So important. And I bring that up too so that listeners do know how important funding for the arts is, and how important individual funding and audiences, and just if maybe you can't go, but maybe you can support whatever that is. $10, $50, 1,000, you know what I mean?
We'll
Everybody
take it.
has whatever you can give is so grateful and essential. I mean, there you were on the cover, not the cover, but in the art section of the
Mm-hmm.
Times, and not able to pay your bill, and we don't want that to happen to artists, because
No,
they face those issues all the time.
absolutely.
Wow. So Dante, is there anything we haven't covered that you'd love to say to tell everybody, share?
I mean, that's the show.
It's exciting, I
Come
know.
check her out. And for my listeners or for your listeners that dance may be new or maybe challenging to figure out how to engage with. I always like to think of being at a party and someone
Yeah.
walks into the space and you see the energy, you feel
Hmm.
the energy shift, and then this person marches through the space into another room. You may not know what happened, but the energy shift, and there's this moment of curiosity. You're like, what was that? What's
Yeah.
going on? I think dance lives in that moment.
Oh, I like
Dance
that.
lives inside of that question of curiosity. And I think if we're able to suspend our need to define
Yeah.
and suspend our need to rush to the next feeling or rush
Hmm.
to the next moment, and we can live inside of a feeling that evolves and shifts over 5 or 10 or 20 minutes,
Yeah.
that is where dance lies. It lies in between the moment of understanding something is happening and understanding what it is that did happen
Yeah.
and finding the possibility in between that.
Yeah.
So if we are able to sit in that feeling
Hmm.
and sit in that wonder and sit in that curiosity, then I think that's where dance can start to really come alive for us.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that, and for the listeners too, to go experience it. Dance is an experience. You're in the audience and you're experiencing what's going on. I spoke to somebody on a podcast probably over a year ago, and they had said, and I thought it was so true. Everybody finds their moment of entry. It can
Mm-hmm.
be like someone walks out on that stage. It could be when the lights go down after they've made that announcement, and all of a sudden that hush comes over, you become available. The audience has to become available to experience. And I think that's beautiful. Well, Dante, it's always so great to talk to you.
Thank
Um,
you too.
yeah, thank you for joining me on Dance Talk. Everybody go see this performance. It's going to be a good one. 80 years, they're doing something right. 80th anniversary, Limon is doing something right. Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Dante,
you
for
so much.
joining. Thanks a lot. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks
This is
again.
Dance Talk with Joanne Carey. Follow us, like us, and share, share, share.
Powered by Riverside.